just extremely unfortunate. But then another broke up in the air, and another. Within 2 years, 3 comets crashed, resulting in the loss of 89 lives. 3 crashes in 2 years was beyond bad luck. Something was up. And after several inquiries, an unlikely culprit was found. Look at this picture of the comet next to a modern Airbus. Notice any difference? Here, let's zoom in. It's the windows. Notice how the Airbus windows have rounded corners, whereas the Comet has hard, angled corners? In vehicular engineering, a square corner, or angle, is considered a stress amplifier. When you apply pressure to an object, it's most likely to break around a stress amplifier like that. Now think of a Toblerone. The hard angles where the corners meet is always where you break it apart. The square-cornered windows around the Comet's fuselage were particularly vulnerable to pressure. They are, after all, at the front of a plane going 450 miles per hour. After a few journeys, those square windows gave out, where round ones would have remained strong. It's sad to think about, but this one aesthetic design decision ended up costing many people their lives. De Havilland immediately redesigned their planes, and no airplane has featured square windows since. Today, the final Comet has been decommissioned to an air hangar which acts as a museum. Let's just hope that hangar doesn't have square windows, or it'll never fly. Screws loose. The dream of space travel has always been an idea that unites all humanity. One day, together, we may make the impossible possible. Nah, just kidding. It's about showing off. Throughout the 50s and 60s, the USSR and USA were competing to see who could get to the moon first. Because, as any YouTube comment section will tell you, first is always best. The Soviets were the first to launch a satellite into space with Sputnik on October of 1957, and became the first to launch a living creature into space only a month later. Rest in peace, Lando. You were a real one. As years dragged on, though, the Americans began to catch up. In 1962, they announced their plans for the Saturn V, which they believed would take a man to the moon. Not wanting to be outdone, the Soviets quickly began working on their ambitious N-1 rocket with a similar goal. It was neck and neck until July 3rd, 1969, when the N-1 gloriously launched, before it very, very ungloriously came crashing back down to Earth. The event was a tragedy, claiming the lives of the cosmonauts on board and crushing Soviet spirits. At the time, the N-1 fireball was the largest man-made explosion ever, besides the atomic bomb. The disaster set the USSR back years, both economically and on the world stage. To make matters worse, America's Saturn V launched without a hitch 13 days later, on July 16, 1969. America landed a man on the moon, and that was history. But it almost wasn't. You see, this catastrophic, history-altering explosion was caused by one loose bolt. It turns out that not long after launch, an improperly fastened bolt on the N-1 was sucked into a fuel pump. There, it ricocheted around at high speed, disrupting fuel flow and sparking one huge fireball. If not for that one tiny oversight, we may have seen a Soviet flag frozen forever on the moon. Kids, check your work. Titanic blunder. We all know the story of the Titanic, the supposedly unsinkable cruise ship that sailed into the Atlantic, hit an iceberg, and sank in the icy waters, costing some 1,500 people their lives. Over the decades, the exact cause of the disaster has been picked apart, especially by James Cameron, and the finger of blame often points towards one man, Fred Fleet. He was the lookout on board the Titanic, and it was his job to spot obstacles in the water. So he must have been pretty crummy not to notice the enormous iceberg, right? Well, like many stories from the Titanic, it's more complex and tragic than it usually seems. Shortly before the Titanic departed, higher-up cruise executives decided they wanted esteemed seaman Henry Wilde on the crew. Wilde was experienced, so when he was placed on the crew list, other crew members were moved down in rank to make way for him. where David Blair comes into play. While Mr. Blair was also an experienced seaman, his presence wasn't requested with Mr. Wilde. It was thought that moving Blair down a rank would be insulting to him, so he was instead removed from the voyage. After all, he wouldn't be necessary with Wilde on board. This is where a minor but incredibly tragic accident occurred. You see, when Blair left, he forgot to hand over something small but very important to his replacement, a key. This little key belongs to a vital locker in the crow's nest of the ship. Now, what did this locker contain? Fred Fleet's binoculars. Through this unfortunate series of mishaps, Fleet couldn't access his binoculars on the night of the incident. This meant he was unable to see much of the surrounding ship, and couldn't spot the iceberg until too late. Fleet would survive the incident, but was racked with guilt for the rest of his life. He testified in the Senate that if he'd had his binoculars, he could have prevented the disaster. The key was later found and sold at auction in 2007 for £90,000, some $200,000 today. Although, at one point, technically, it would have been priceless. Quick sig break. This next story is important because it deals with the dangers of smoking. No, I don't mean ruining your lungs, developing an addiction, or causing yourself debilitating health issues. I mean property damage. Sheesh. Our tale begins in Ukraine, in the incredibly easy-to-pronounce village of Novoboldanivka. See, first try. While the town itself was a rather small and humble place, it was keeping an important secret. Nestled in the scenic hills of Novoboldanivka was a munitions warehouse that stored 92,000 tons of explosive material. These included weapons, munitions, and explosives that the country had little use for. They had been stockpiling it after the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s. Still, the munitions were valuable, and guards were installed to watch the depot. The thing is, watching a dreary gray building for hours and hours at a time can get boring. So, they did what all listless Europeans do to kill time: smoke. And what happened next isn't entirely clear, but one account posits that a guard crammed a dirty Burger King wrapper in the smoking area's trash can. As soldiers put their cigarettes out in the designated ashtray, the smoking area began to stink. So the guards decided to move out of the designated smoking area and closer to the weapons depot. For whatever reason, they were there. One guard dropped or flicked an errant cigarette, and catastrophe. Unsurprisingly, if you pile up a bunch of explosives on top of each other, it's really hard to just set one of them off. One explosion led to another, which lit fires, which led to even more explosives going off. The slow and steady chain of explosions made it impossible to safely deal with the disaster. In total, the explosions lasted for 8 straight days, and the effects were felt across an area of over 150 square miles. Several people lost their lives, many were injured, and 35,000 had to be evacuated. Ultimately, the incident caused $450 million worth of damage. Several years later, Ukraine would suffer another catastrophic fire in a weapons depot in Balakleya. While this one isn't confirmed to be the fault of smokers, I wouldn't be surprised if it were. The off-light. Have you ever been confounded by a poor design decision, like a pull door with no handle, or an unreachable outlet? Well, it could be worse. At least those design blunders didn't cause a nuclear meltdown. On March 28, 1979, the unassuming little rock of 3 Mile Island near Middleton, Pennsylvania, had a problem. You see, this unassuming little rock housed a nuclear reactor that was on the verge of overheating. A mechanical failure was preventing pumps from sending water to the plant's steam generators, which removed heat from the reactor's core. Luckily, there was an incredibly simple solution: closing a valve. Once closed, this valve would act as an emergency stopgap, keeping the reactor from overheating. And it could be activated by just hitting a button. So what was the problem? Poor design. You see, there was a little light above the valve indicating its status. Everyone at the power plant reasonably assumed that once the switch was hit and the light above the valve flicked on, it meant the valve was closed and crisis averted. Not so. Instead, the light only indicated that the button had been hit, not that the valve had actually closed. This meant workers were breathing a sigh of relief when they should have been soiling themselves. Had anyone at the plant known this, they would have attempted another solution or pressed the button way earlier, as they didn't know what the light meant. The plant overheated and went into meltdown. The incident is still considered the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history, forcing thousands to evacuate their homes, causing severe damage to the plant and the surrounding environment. But luckily, we have a minor effect on the workers. Cleanup would take 12 years and $973 million, all because someone thought it might indicate something might happen. A good idea. Shaky ground. During the Second Punic War, some 2,200 years ago, ancient Rome was squaring off against the toughest adversary they'd ever faced, the North African kingdom of Carthage. What made Carthage so terrible was one of history's baddest ever mofos, Hannibal Barca. Hannibal won 7 huge victories against Rome, including the Battle of Cannae, which is still seen as one of the most strategically impressive victories in history, as well as one of Rome's greatest defeats. Rome was so scared of Carthage that some politicians used every speech with the phrase, "Carthage must be destroyed." They were talking about something else, and eventually his army won. So, what did Hannibal win? It's a great historical mystery. The predominant theory is that, despite his victory, Hannibal's supplies and men were too few for him to assault Rome's capital. This allowed Rome time to regroup and eventually win the war. Why was Hannibal running on empty, though? Well, during the war, Hannibal decided to cross the Alps with his army. This was a miserable, insane trek, especially considering he had 5 elephants in tow. One account reports that to inspire his men to march on, Hannibal decided to give a rousing speech. He ended it by dramatically striking his cane with the snow, which triggered a massive avalanche that buried 1/3 of his army alive. Some accounts say as many as 18,000 men and elephants were wiped out instantly. If true, this sudden loss would explain why Hannibal didn't have the manpower to seize Rome. When Rome emerged victorious, it sealed their status as the predominant superpower of the classical era. If Carthage had won, the world would look very different. Many languages would be based on English rather than Latin, meaning our alphabet would look like this, and we'd be using words like kitty. Is that how you pronounce that? Lip? Key? Huh? Without Rome, there'd also be no Holy Roman Empire, and probably no Christianity either, as there'd be no Roman occupation of Jerusalem. It's hard to even imagine visiting all this because Grandpa needed to make it dramatic. On-Shin Impact. 1995 was a big year. Windows released an operating system that would take the world by storm. Michael Jordan made his triumphant return to basketball. And somehow, a movie about shooting gorillas with diamond-powered lasers was a hit. For Japan, however, this year is remembered for a single catastrophic event, the Hanshin earthquake. This monstrous 7.3 magnitude quake occurred early on January 17th. In addition to quaking between 5 and 6.5 thousand tons, it caused a mind-boggling $200 billion. As unavoidable as much of this destruction was, there was one area where things didn't have to go as badly as they did, and that was along the Kobe route. This is the main link between the city of Kobe and Osaka, which housed the mighty Hanshin Expressway. Constructed in 1966, the network was supposed to be able to withstand an earthquake's tremors, but that didn't happen, and the bridge collapsed. Why? A post-mortem on the bridge suggests it had improper hoop anchorage, along with insufficient shear capacity. To put simply, anchorage refers to the means by which structures are connected to concrete, while shear capacity refers to a structure's ability to resist sliding against itself. While either of these oversights are bad on their own, in a structure supposedly designed to withstand earthquakes, they made for an especially terrible combo. In the 20 short seconds the earthquake lasted, the bridge buckled and collapsed. It was so utterly decimated that it needed to be completely rebuilt at the cost of $4.6 billion. As you can see, when it comes to civic engineering, everything must be perfect, and it has to be regularly maintained to stay perfect. Take this football stadium in Vitesse in the Netherlands, for example. Fans were cheering and stomping along after victory in 2021 when this happened. By some miracle, there were no reports of any injuries. While the fans laughed it off, Mayor Hubert Bruls failed to knowing the situation could have been much worse. A formal inquiry didn't reveal a single cause, but did reveal the structure had been built in the 1930s with almost no maintenance between then and if you're an American laughing it up at the silly European and Japanese infrastructure, get ready for a rude awakening, because by some calculations, as much as 25% of U.S. infrastructure is at risk of becoming disastrous consequences. Just check out this Metrodome collapse from of snow break through that roof. This Minnesota Stadium's roof featured an exterior layer of Teflon-coated fiberglass, with an inner layer of fabric acting as the structure's ceiling. The roof itself was sturdy, weighing in at a hefty 580,000 pounds. The problem was an oversight in the material. You see, even a small hole in a weak fabric can become a big deal if enough pressure is applied to it. And all that snow applied a lot of pressure. Like a torn bed sheet, the tiny holes in the fabric grew and grew under the weight of the snow before the whole thing collapsed. Imagine if the team had been practicing, they'd have become skiers. Let's learn from examples like Anshin, Minnesota, and Vitesse. Check your work, and then check it again every few years. Sweep the legs. Legs are great. They let you walk around, prop open doors, and deliver roundhouse kicks to punks dissing your girl. My God. But you know what legs aren't good for? Buildings. Buildings don't need to walk around or deliver roundhouse kicks. Well, in 1977, City Hall unveiled their fancy building, known at the time as the City Center. While it boasted a sleek, modern design with an angled roof and a series of long, slender legs, this fancy new look made the building the toast of New York on construction. That fabulous design gave the building a glaring weakness, however. Wind. You see, it gets 918 feet up in the air because there's nothing to impose any air resistance. Trees on their buildings. Architecture student Diane Hartman realized that the shape of the building is susceptible to partially, which could threat structural integrity. Diane contacted the building's designer with her discovery. He honest his mistake. While he had accounted for strong winds on the building's faces, he hadn't thought about the effects on its corners. Doing some frantic research, William realized that a storm strong enough to top of the building occurred roughly once every 55 years. Worse still, its legs meant if it did fall, it wouldn't collapse but topple onto other buildings, causing even more destruction. Sounds bad, right? It gets worse. Because Diane and William discovered this fact right before Hurricane Ella was set to hit New York. William sprang into action. He created an evacuation plan with the NYPD and made sure there were 2,500 Red Cross members on standby. He and a team of engineers worked around the clock for 3 months straight to devise a solution. Working covertly to avoid creating hysteria, engineers welded 2-inch thick steel plates over the building's poles, increasing its resilience. They worked so secretly that residents of the building didn't even notice them. Thanks Thanks to Diane's deduction, William's conviction to fix his mistake, and the hard work of those engineers, the crisis was averted. All without making headlines. In fact, the only reason this was uncovered at all was because an engineer blabbed about it at a party years later. Hey, I get it. It's a heck of a brag. Well, the huge consequence of this tiny mistake was avoided. I figured we could end on a lighter note. Sue me. Well, those were some terrifyingly consequential mistakes, huh? What's the worst tiny mistake you've ever made? Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching.
Glorious food. Well, it's not always glorious. Sometimes the food we find on our plates is definitely not fit for consumption. From restaurant and grocery stores to truly accommodating some hijinks. Let's take a look at some of the grossest things that happen here when you're not looking. McMaggots. McDonald's, everyone's favorite. And for good reason, too. They have all the classics. Big Macs, McNuggets, McMaggots. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Oh, wait. McMaggots? Well, unfortunately, this was the case for one unlucky customer in 2019. This Aussie's day was promptly ruined as he tucked into his scrumptious burger, only to find an infestation of maggots writhing inside his meal. Now, I'm sure you can imagine how disgusted the guy was, but let's just roll the clip captured at that very moment anyway, and see his reaction.
Look at him, you can see him moving. That is absolutely disgusting. 2018, and this is the kind of health conditions that I have to accept from McDonald's. Not happy at all. Look at them all. How many burgers have I eaten from you people?
Wow, he really wasn't happy. But that's totally understandable. I mean, seeing those little maggots wriggling in and out of the meat. And even worse, he'd already eaten some of them. Poor fella. Except he's not the only one. Yep, an Australian mom found herself cringing at these critters after buying her young son a Happy Meal. After posting the incident online and vowing to never touch fast food again, the mom's accusations were undermined by the fast food giant themselves, as McDonald's claimed it is very unlikely this occurred in our restaurant. We have great confidence in our food safety and handling procedures, which roughly translates to, who, me? No, possibly been my fault. So while it seems the Golden Arches vehemently denies McMaggots are actually being served, it seems to suggest otherwise. One thing remains certain. Not all Happy Meals have happy endings. In 2015, shoppers at the Walmart in Chicopee, Massachusetts were astonished to find a package group of sparrows pecking away at the grocery store meat. Fence, I know it's not fancy looks like one, so they were probably just confused. Still, around the kitchen, the woman who captured the disgusting scene stated that she'll never buy food ever again. And seeing those little roots pecking away at the raw meat, you blame her. Walmart officials responded to this situation, saying the impacted product was immediately removed from shelves and disposed of. Professionals were also brought in to remove the birds. In all, 17 birds were trapped and released. So, with their meat heist brought to a halt, Walmart may have won this time, but it's only a matter of time before the birds attack again. So, one eye open, Walmart. You too, Rhonda. Deep Fried Rat. Coming to theaters this fall. Ratatouille 2, The Great Grease Trap. Set in a Texas suburb, this heartwarming tragedy tells the tale of a little rat who made his way into a restaurant in 2019 and met his fate in the deep fryer. And while I don't think Pixar will be picking this script up anytime soon, seriously, stop replying to my emails. The story is still a mixture of hilarious and a little sad. Oh, and it's 100% true, and I've got the footage to prove it. Between me and you, here's a little premiere.
Oh man, I'm on this chilling, bro.
This little guy seemed to get stage fright and tried to scurry out of sight. But the lady in the pink had other ideas.
Bro! Oh, Lord! Oh, what did the green? That's this wrong, God!
As they tussled, the rat decidedly took a leap of faith right into the fryer. Southern fried rat, anybody? Understandably, the customers were a little disgruntled.
I fear that you were previously acquainted with this vessel. Well, that is most unfortunate. As for his flesh, I hope you can make your peace.
After sacrificing the rat to the fast food gods, pandemonium broke loose, with equal parts of disgust and amusement. All the while, some poor rat was getting crispier by the second. It probably comes as no surprise that this rodent restaurant was closed, cleansed, and cleared of any of Little Stanley's family. Oh yeah, I named
If
him.
you are prepared to show the town lordship through and heed the words of
Is
I,
this vegan? Back in 2018, a group of hungry diners made reservations at Carlini, a restaurant in England where Chef Laura Goodman cooks the meals. They ate their food and left, but the following evening, Laura posted this to Facebook. Pious, judgmental vegan, who I spent all day cooking for, has gone to bed, still believing she's a vegan. Which, reading between the lines, would lead most people to assume that Laura adulterated their food with animal produce. From an ethical standpoint, this is clearly out of line. A vegan customer might well have even had special dietary requirements or allergies governing their veganism. Although the chef initially bragged that she'd spiked a vegan a few hours ago, she soon retracted these statements, instead claiming, "I am really deeply sorry. There was no meat products added to the dishes." Of course, her attempt to backpedal in the face of being exposed wasn't quite sufficient, and ultimately she resigned. So fear not, vegans, she won't be striking again. Chinese street food. Street food is tasty, inexpensive, and provides flavorsome offerings from all different countries and cultures. However, it seems some people have maybe interpreted the phrase street food too literally. A San Francisco Chinese restaurant, Lucky River, faced scrutiny back in 2014 after being caught beating their meat on the sidewalk. When confronted about why one of its staff members was slamming totally uncovered meat onto the sidewalk, management explained they were simply trying to tenderize it, with reports claiming that the street they were pounding onto was filled with cigarette butts, gum, and general grime, and with other rumored health code violations under their belt. It's no surprise that Lucky River was soon under the microscope. They were issued an order to rectify the problems and retrain staff or face closure. And while I'd like to tell you an inspiring story about the underdog who proved them all wrong, I won't be. From my research, they appear to be permanently closed, which really is probably for the best. Employee of the Month. This next food hygiene horror story comes from Redditor, Not a Terminator, who explains his shocking experience as an assistant cook at an unspecified restaurant. 2 weeks into the job, he went to grab a can of tomato sauce out of the cupboard, only to be greeted by, in his words, a huge-ass tarantula. Now, if it was me, I'd have gone a mile, but Not a Terminator decided to make his boss aware of this alien pocket. After expressing his concern, the boss replied, I see you got Eduardo. Yep, apparently his boss kept the spider there as a means to warn off pests and rodents. And while I'm sure Eduardo was a hard worker, I'd definitely rather the restaurant I'm eating at not keep a tarantula in their cupboards. And if there's truth to the Redditor's tale, I'm pretty sure the Department of Health would agree. Horse meat scandal. If you cast your mind back to 2013, you might recall the notorious scandal about grocery store meat being adulterated with horse meat. That's right, in parts of Europe, meat advertised as beef was found after investigations to contain as much as 100% of undeclared horse meat. On top of that, it was also confirmed that a smaller number of beef products actually contained pork, which from an ethical standpoint meant that several religious groups were likely to have been misled from their dietary requirements. Causing international outrage, the scandal affected almost everyone, from grocery stores to consumers, and from the meat industry to the wider economy. But where did the horse meat actually come from? Turns out investigators found Willie Selton, a Dutch meat wholesaler, guilty on accounts of forging invoices and labels, resulting in him selling 300 tons of horse meat labeled as beef. Selton insisted that the horse meat he supplied was only intended for pet food, but somehow ended up being used for burgers. While the naysayers aren't so quick to believe this alibi, it still remains unclear who is exactly to blame. Going forward, European governments promise stricter procedures requiring retailers and producers to publish meaningful tests on their meat. That said, according to the BBC, Willie was only sentenced to 2.5 years in 2015, meaning at the time of this video, he's probably back out there meddling with meat. Check your burgers, folks. Taco taster. I'll reluctantly admit it, Taco Bell is pretty tasty. And if I worked there, I'd find it hard not to eat the food myself. Turns out that one of their employees was over the same. A picture posted to Facebook in 2013. The employee can be seen making a stack of those delicious taco shells. After the photo went viral, Taco Bell HQ unsurprisingly didn't see the funny side, as they promptly suspended and subsequently fired the employee responsible. However, these shells were not given to customers. In fact, they were headed for the garbage anyway. When it comes down to it, Taco Bell had the brand. Breaking tacos, well, that doesn't fit the break. But this isn't the only gross thing to happen behind Taco Bell. Another former employee sealed his own fate in 2012 when he posted a picture on social media of him urinating onto a tray of nachos. In the end, this taco taker was dismissed from the restaurant, but there's still a question. Like, ask me, that stream of feed looks a little off-center to be actually coming from this, Crowther statement, suggesting it might be juice coming from a bottle, which would be a somewhat pleasant relief. But whether it was a harmless prank or not, one thing's for sure, when employees are up to mischief, Taco Bell is so totally shoppers. Is there anything better than advertising your robot personal maintenance? Or Solomon's Mono Chocolat? You resist. Well, after you see the being nibbled on by rodents, yep, in 2021 at a Sainsbury's supermarket in Essex Road, London, these rats seem to be enjoying their continental breakfast to the horror of all. We got the interest of took action, closing the store for a visit from the cleaners and pest control. Sainsbury's assured him that hygiene is the most important thing to them. Though with that many orders, I think it'll take a while to regain the public's trust. Ironically, the store recently rebranded their slogan to helping everyone eat better, which apparently includes rats too. But jokes aside, keeping the rodents at bay can be an impossible task. Some sources claim that in built-up areas, you're never more than 20 feet away from a rat. And with even the most defensive measures in place, where there's food, rodents are to be expected to some degree. In fact, U.S. food law factors rodents into their sales safety legislation, with 11 rodent hairs allowed per 25 grams of paprika, 4.5 hairs per 225 grams of noodles, and 4 hairs per 25 grams of curry powder, among others. So while I could give Sainsbury's the benefit of the doubt for their rat problem, I'll still think twice about buying unpackaged baked goods. That's not what I ordered. Guess what I ordered? In 2008, worker John Agnes found something totally unexpected inside his Subway sandwich. John was horrified when he tugged into his sandwich only to find a 7-inch knife baked into it. Luckily, John managed to spot the unsolicited sandwich filling before it did a number on his mouth. But while John wasn't wounded by the knife, its filthy plastic handle had partially melted into the sandwich, causing John to become violently ill for 3 hours. But how could this possibly have happened? Perhaps some half-asleep employee haphazardly misplaced their knife in John's sandwich? It's unclear whether this was a genuine mistake or a terrible practical joke, but either way, it seems John got the last laugh as he was awarded a hefty $1 million in compensation. Which, if you ask me, sounds totally worth the 3 hours of vomiting. Teriyaki intruder. By this point in the video, you probably realize rats love food. So much so that sometimes they become the food. Yep. In 2019, one day Yanira Cortez bought her daughter a portion of teriyaki chicken from the Ohio restaurant in Japan. She was horrified to realize that some of the chicken was actually a baby rat. Yanira's daughter's friend, who spotted the teriyaki intruder, immediately went to the bathroom to vomit and lost her appetite for days. Take a look at the clip.
Spoken
I think you
echoes
might
of
just
Queen
feel the same.
Marika linger
Esto es
here as well.
increíble. Miren lo que
Shall
acabo
I
de
share them
encontrar
with you?
aquí en esto.
In
Una
Marika's
rata
Ojat, brave
cocinada.
warriors,
Oh my god, qué
our guidance
asquerosidad.
hath delivered ye
Mira,
through. Put the
está
giants to the
cocinada.
sword and
La
confine
cara,
with
oh my
Letinue
god.
Irandish.
¿Ya vieron?
We're almost there. The flame of ruin. I'm glad it was you. I must tender my thanks to Torrin. Thank you.
No.
Please continue to
This
lend your
cooked
aid.
rat rests in
There
pieces
is
in the meal,
something my
and just seeing its
purpose is
severed
to
body and
now.
exposed guts is enough to
I
put
have set
anybody
my
off teriyaki
heart
chicken for
upon
life.
the world,
After
regardless.
taking to
I
social
won't
media to
allow
warn people
anyone,
about the
not
Japanese
even.
restaurant, Yanira's viral video prompted health
Shall I
officials to
connect my
inspect
share
and
them with
subsequently
me?
close the Ohio restaurant. Ironically, they failed to find any further evidence of rodents in the building, though they did spot flies, cockroaches, and sewage backing up through the floor drains. Not sure which is worse, the cooked rat or the presence of poop in the kitchen where they were cooking the rats. Let me know what you think in the comments. Filthy Chinese restaurant. If that last story didn't convince you that restaurants don't always have the cleanest kitchens, then this next one definitely will. In 2015, deep cleaner William Panzino uploaded a video tour of a grimy restaurant in Littleton, New Hampshire, called Asian Garden. Having cleaned this kitchen just 3 months prior to the video, Panzino was certainly unimpressed, to say the least. This is the Asian Garden in New Hampshire. Littleton, New Hampshire. You guys like Chinese food? This is how it's prepped right here. Food goes up the filters. This restaurant was cleaned by us 3 months ago, and this is what it's done in 3 months. See all that? All the grease there dripping? Yeah, that was delicious. Yeah. You got carrots and beef and all that other crap. They've got meat with your vegetables, and they set the pan on top of the meat. They serve you this. Cross-contamination right there, that's against the law. It's a wall. And over here, where they prep your sugars and salts and more of your sauces. How'd you like a little extra protein? Look at this. It's so hard to clean once in a while. What we got under here? Or do I dare move it? Oh, I can't even. Oh, there we go. The whole kitchen is coated with grime and dripping grease due to a lack of regular basic cleaning alongside intense cooking with oil. As you may know, oil isn't water soluble, so when it evaporates, it creates a thin layer of grease wherever it comes into contact. This sticky residue then invites dust, dirt, and bacteria to stick to it, which left unclean can result in some extremely vile states like this. Look at the handle. Just an example of their amazing hygiene. These are your clean dishes, well, what they call clean. Look what's above them. You see all this right here? This pipe had crap all over it falling right into your dishes. You see right there? All that. It falls right onto your dishes and you eat it. All spun state of the kitchen. William posted the video online, which has since accumulated over 3 million views. And as expected, many were quick to express their disgust at the restaurant's hygiene standards. One user even wrote, "I'm on a diet right now, but I watch this video every time I have the urge to eat unhealthy. So far, it's worked like a charm." I might just have to give that a try. The centipede and the scorpion. For most, it's a pretty standard procedure to wash cooked veg before eating it. What with it being grown outdoors, who knows how many germs can be lurking, right? Or scorpions and centipedes, for that matter. One person in 2019 came across these aforementioned creepy crawlers in their long-sought fruit and shared the cringeworthy footage of them scuttling about. Safe to say, I wouldn't be in the mood for alongside fruit after seeing that. This video was posted anonymously, so there's little information available. But what I can can tell you is lawn-side fruit and vegetables are pretty common in the Philippines. So if you're in the area, I'd wash my fruit very thoroughly if I were you.
Those who live it all the more.
Cheddar Chomper. Who doesn't love a little try before you buy? This rat, minding his own business, trying a little bit of cheese
had a
before he
change of
takes it to the
heart
checkout to
already.
pay for it, certainly seems to.
understand your disdain
Christopher
as
Allison,
much
who
should
filmed
you
this
change
clip, is
unbend.
probably more of a buy now, try later kind of guy, as he decided to rat this little shopper out when he saw him chomping some cheese in an Illinois Food for Less store in 2019.
Look at that.
While Christopher maintained a lighthearted attitude about the situation, Food for Less weren't so lax. Made it known that they dealt with the issue at hand by destroying the affected goods, sanitizing the display, and of course having this unwelcome shopper escorted out of the building. Aw, didn't even give him a chance to pay. KFC's secret ingredient? Ah, KFC. Famed for its uniquely delicious taste. Legend has it that the secret KFC formula is made up of 11 top-secret herbs and spices. Maybe their unique flavor is attributed to something entirely different. In 2013, one KFC employee was pictured licking some of their delicious mashed potatoes, which leads me to think, is this what gives their food that special zing? I'm just playing around. With this picture in mind, who knows what other revolting shenanigans go on behind the counter. That said, KFC did clarify that nothing is more important to KFC than food safety. The employee involved was immediately terminated. So yeah, perhaps licking the food isn't the special ingredient. Or maybe it is. And anyone who reveals that fact gets terminated. Better watch my back, in case the Colonel dumbled. Burger King Creepers. Back in 2018, a Burger King franchise came under fire for having a rat-infested kitchen. And it was bad. Upon inspection, live rats found that they made a few big whoppers of their own in the burger buns, dry storage, and even the ice machines. Chantel Johnson, an employee at the store, came face to face with the new employees and decided to capture this short clip of the moment. Hey! Gross, right? And I can't help but wonder just how long these guys were here. Or even worse, how many more burger buns they snuggled themselves into. The video went viral and the fast food chain made sure to react quick. After Chantel had encouraged people to not eat at the restaurant, the premises closed for 3 days to ensure everything was spick and span, ready to welcome back hungry customers, and hopefully not hungry rats. Uber Eats for all. One of the greatest triumphs of mankind undoubtedly is the rise of food delivery services such as Uber Eats. It's never been so easy to have your favorite meals delivered to your doorstep, or rather, some of your favorite meal. Let me explain. Turns out you shouldn't be too trusting of the person delivering your food. In 2021, TikTok creator @Sarah from Florida shared a video showing an Uber Eats employee tucking into a customer's food, piling it up in his own little doggy bag, before packaging the rest back up for delivery. Shockingly, the employee loads his own Tupperware box, seals all the packaging back up, hops on his bike, and gets on with delivering the food to the customer, who was probably waiting excitedly, unaware of who tucked into their food first. This sly guy didn't go unpunished, though. In fact, it was later reported that he was fired, which, considering those sticky fingers of his, shouldn't come as any surprise. More concerning, though, is how many other delivery employees are out there doing this, flying under the radar, yet to be caught. Could you be getting a half-size portion? Maybe so, but on the bright side, it could be worse. After all, if I were a delivery driver, I hate to break it to you, but there would be nothing left to deliver. Hairy mouthful. Now this next story is one that just keeps getting worse as it goes along, and is not for the faint of heart. You've been warned. It comes from Redditor Womble's Mama and begins with her uncle, a health inspector in Australia. He received reports of a fish and chip shop that was apparently very dirty and serving food with chunks of hair in it. He went and inspected the restaurant unannounced, only to be greeted by the owner, a very hairy and sweaty man wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and no shoes. Her uncle concluded that the source of hair must have been coming from the cook and advised him to wear proper garments. He also suggested changing the oil in the fryer, as it was filthy and likely contaminated with all his hair. So the cook got to draining the oil right away while Wombles' uncle was still present, only to find something he'd misplaced a while back. His cat. That's right, his dead, deep-fried, and crispy cat, as Womble's mama so eloquently described it. And the cook's reaction? Oh, that's where my cat went. You don't say. The Reddit concluded by clarifying that the hair people had been having an effort wasn't the man's, but in their own words, the fur and flesh of a dead cat. Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. Be grateful you're not one of the poor people who complained about those mysterious ones. The stuff they like. Butts. So, I'm proud of it. And I'm scratching. 2016. This McDonald's employee was caught butt naked while completing a customer's order. The customer made sure to mention the law. TikToker at Bro, this is sensory clip. However, the original post titled this employee had no knowledge about it. The guy interrupts her while she's in the zone, and she's completely not happy. As soon as her hand resurfaces from the rear end, she grabs a prize and puts it in the cat with this. Yeah. But this employee knows she was expectations McDonald's and our franchisees had at Wind Rivers. So clearly having a long term is part of their training program. Yes, the city don't like the hand down in the comments below. So, thanks for watching.
Can't ripen while on the tree. If not picked, they will simply fall from the branch while still not ripe. When picked, though, they will become soft and flavorful just like we love them. This happens because of the burst of ethylene produced by the fruit itself after picking. It's inhibited while the avocado is still on the tree. Tomatoes bought in supermarkets often have a weak flavor. It has to do with how they're grown and stored afterwards. Tomatoes are gathered when not fully ripe yet, and they ripen in the transportation containers and on the store shelves. But if they're stored at temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit while not fully ripe, they lose a lot of their flavor. So, to keep them tasty, it's best to store tomatoes outside the fridge. Honey is probably the only food that can literally never go bad. If it it's properly sealed with no air left in, it can go for millennia and still be edible. The oldest pot of honey ever found was 5,500 years old, next to the mummy of Winnie the Pooh. Nah, not really.
Today we take you on a fascinating journey through nature's laboratory, exploring part 2 of the top 10 unsettling crossbreeding events you were never taught in school. Prepare to be amazed as we delve into the unusual world of interspecies mixing. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the mule. The humble mule, a creature born of a union between a male donkey and a female horse, is a testament to the incredible diversity of life and the possibilities of crossbreeding. This hybrid offspring has been an invaluable asset to humanity for centuries, embodying a perfect balance of strength, speed, endurance, and sure-footedness. Mules are remarkable creatures that beautifully combine the best characteristics of their parent species. However, the mule's hybrid nature comes with a biological cost. Typically, mules are sterile, a consequence that's commonly observed in hybrid species. This sterility stems from the mismatch in the number of chromosomes of their parent species, which prevents successful reproduction. Despite this genetic setback, mules have carved a very unique niche in human societies. Their remarkable abilities have made them indispensable in various sectors, including agriculture, transportation, and even warfare. The humble mule's contribution to human civilization is a testament to its resilience and adaptability, qualities that make this hybrid creature a fascinating subject of study. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Iron Age pig. Now, brace yourself for an animal so wild, it might as well have time traveled straight from the Iron Age to your screen. We're talking about the Iron Age pig, a real paradox born from a cross between your friendly neighborhood domestic pig and the not-so-friendly wild boar. You'd think, being half domestic, these little critters would be up for a snuggle, right? Well, wrong. Despite packing some serious resilience in their porcine bodies, these hogs are about as sociable as a grizzly with a toothache. Their aggression levels are dialed up to 11, making them about as farm-friendly as a pack of velociraptors. So, what's the moral of this little tiki tale? Well, it turns out playing Mother Nature isn't as easy as it sounds. The Iron Age pig experiment ended up being less eureka and more, a big snorting reminder that when it comes to tampering with the blueprints of life, maybe we should leave it to the pros. In short, these bristly hybrids stand as living, grunting proof that not every trip down memory lane is a stroll in the park. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Henny. Picture this, the sprinting stamina of a racehorse and the stubborn grit of a donkey, all rolled into one. Welcome to the fascinating, if a bit troublesome, life of a Henny. This peculiar beast is what you get when you mix a male horse's speed and a female donkey's tenacity. Despite the fact that they could probably outlast a marathon runner and have lifespans that would make the tortoise nod in approval, Hennies don't exactly have it easy. For starters, they usually can't have little pennies of their own. Yeah, nature hit them with a sterile tag, just like the mules. And then there's the elephant in the room. Or should we say the horse and donkey in the room. They've got a mom who's petite and a dad who's, well, horseier. The mismatch is like trying to blend a sports car with a minivan. The result is awkward. In the end, the life of a Henny is a cautionary tale straight from nature's own genetic soap opera. A clear memo that when it comes to stirring up the gene pool, sometimes you might end up with a cocktail that's a little bit more bitter than sweet. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Savannah cat, a product of love or science. Between a domestic cat and a serval, this feline is a strange cocktail of domestic cuddles and wild prowling. These guys don't do things by halves. They are the true embodiment of go big or go home. And by big, I mean double the size of your regular tabby, akin to swapping your cuddly kitten for a mini panther. And these bigger bodies house some pretty wild tendencies. A bit like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but in feline form. However, this mix of house pet and wildcat isn't just a spectacle, it's a little bit of a ticking time bomb. Let's face it, nobody wants their morning coffee interrupted by their pet tiger, cat, chasing local wildlife or causing a ruckus. It's this fine line between awe-inspiring and eyebrow-raising that makes the Savannah cat an ethical puzzle in the world of crossbreeding. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mule bird. The mule bird is a one-of-a-kind melody maker born from the union of a canary and a goldfinch. A musical marvel, you might say. But hold on to your feathers, because this birdie's tale is as unsettling as it is intriguing. You see, the mule bird is not just another chirper in the apiary. It's an aria virtuoso, belting out tunes that would make even Pavarotti's heart flutter. But, as they say, every rose has its thorns, and our songbird friend here comes with its own bittersweet symphony. For all their musical prowess, mulebirds are the tragic heroes of the bird world. Despite their captivating chorus, they've been dealt a cruel hand by nature, or should we say, by us. They're sterile, forever singing solos without the chance to create a choir of their own. And this is where we, the audience, have to take a bow. We bred these birds for our amusement, crafting a creature that could never craft a lineage of its own. A poignant reminder of the Pandora's box that is crossbreeding, where human curiosity can sometimes strike a discordant note. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Lepon, whatever you prefer. It's a magnificent creature that'll leave you both fascinated and slightly disconcerted. A head like a regal lion, complete with a majestic mane, paired with a sleek and agile leopard body. It's a blend of two of nature's most iconic feline species, resulting in a mesmerizing and puzzling spectacle. The Lepon's rarity is truly a sight to behold. You won't find these hybrids roaming the wild. They are a product of human intervention, born in captivity, where biology took a turn down a very peculiar path. It's a reminder of the lengths we humans sometimes go to bend nature to our will. Apparently, we couldn't resist the temptation to create such a majestic mashup. But let's not forget the questions this creature raises. Does the Lepon represent a triumph in human ingenuity or a meddling with Mother Nature's design? Should we be playing Dr. Frankenstein with the building blocks?
This world is in dire need of death. Are you prepared to commit? Very well, let my hand. O Erd Tree, you shall burn. Burn for the sake of the new Lord. Thank you for guiding me here. The one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death. Goodbye.